When I opened my apartment door, there was Bill and Melinda Gates, and I was like, what is going on? That's because I'm used to cooking for so many people. And then you've got the Clintons, the Obamas, and I was like, holy moly, what is going on? I wasn't planning to leave banking. It was just a sidebar conversation. And I thought, what would really happen if I did that? And I was given a year sabbatical by Berkshire Hathaway. I was working for Warren Buffett. I put my house on Airbnb. I shared my house with strangers so I wouldn't dig into my capital. My mortgage depended on my business being successful.
Welcome to the Bay HQ, where we inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians. Smash that subscribe button if you watch this on YouTube, and leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. Today we have with us Saima Khan, who's the founder and executive chef of the Hampstead kitchen, curated dining experiences. How are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I got that right the second time around. There's no point pretending otherwise.
It's okay. It's cool.
When you were growing up,
Yes.
did you ever think one day you'd be doing what you are today and where you are?
Absolutely not. I probably thought I was going to have like 3 or 4 children, and that was it. I mean, I'm a daughter of immigrant parents who came here in the 70s. Education was key, and then getting your kids married off. But yeah, if I look at my life, I don't think I could have predicted, but I don't have any regrets. I think this is the path I was meant to be on.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be? What were you thinking?
I actually wanted to be a dentist.
Okay.
It was too many
Did you
years.
want to be a dentist or your
No,
parents?
I wanted to be a dentist, but my mother was very conservative. My father was very liberal, but I was very tall, and there was a lot of pressure that it was expected that after education, that marriage was, there was a ton of men lined up, and I had to just pick one. And that was a norm. It wasn't arranged marriage as such. I call it introduction. But that was the path, and that was the path that didn't really resonate with me.
Maybe somebody listening right now is in that path right now. They don't want to be in that path. What did you do? Like, how did you change your direction?
Well, I remember somebody asked me this the other day. I remember dropping someone, being in the back of the car, and I would go on the Hammersmith flyover and saw this building called Wang Computers. And I always had this fascination. One day I'm going to work in a building like that and have my own office. And in fact, when I was doing my A-levels, I even applied to them and they offered me like an internship. But I knew from a very early age that I wanted to work. I never really subscribed to that kind of, I want to get married. And I was the eldest cousin, so there's a lot of pressure that I was the first. So I got my brother married off to a friend of mine, and then got my parents off. I think parents just didn't have enough examples. I hadn't seen many examples, but I grew up in quite a Sufi kind of background. Mother's conservative, father's a bit more liberal. So I think I was an amalgamation of both. And so there is a thing of inner calling. And it's when you start switching off culture, society, that the answers come to you. And I knew I was destined for something better. And yes, we hear loads of podcasts where people talk about that, but it is about quieting the noise around you when you do hear your calling, or you want to call it the universe. There are people who are atheists who don't follow religion, but there is a path that just feels right. And then I went into banking of all sorts. That's when banking was very sexy in those days, where you had the big bonuses, and banks were quite not right like they are now, but it was a very lucrative business to go into. And the more you studied, the more higher up you went, and the less desirable you were on the sort of marriage front. And you grow up with all these what's expected of you, and it seems to be one path for men and women equally. There's a lot of pressure, but yeah, somehow we put one step in front of the other. And I think I just got to a path where I was living, in different cities around the world, doing very, very well, running global projects. So yeah, life was quite rock and roll. I was earning very well. I had my feet on the ground because I'd had a very good upbringing. So combination of experiences and upbringing, now that I'm in my early 50s, which sounds really old, I think I look back and I think these are 2 things that I'm very, very fortunate that I had, and are the reasons why I am where I am right now.
What attracted you to banking in the first place? Like, why banking? You said you wanted to do dentistry as a kid. Why
Too many years of studying, so that was going to be ruled out, because obviously you get married in your early 20s, and then that's a joke right now because I didn't get married. But I think everybody's got a natural skill set. I love projects. I love issues. Providing solutions, and so I've got a reputation of providing, delivering programs of work around the world. When I was in banking, on budget, on time. Even recently, I was parked consulting at a hedge fund because I missed the nerdy part. So I've got a creative part of my brain, and the nerdy part of my brain. So I think I just fell into it by mistake, and it felt like it was a really nice fit, but it never defined me as a person. Like I know some people just get really het up that they're lawyers and bankers or traders, but that wasn't my story. You know, I started off in commodity trading, which was a very great start in the banking sector. It opened up a very different world, but diversity, meeting different people from different parts of the world, what that adds, and just seeing how your personality, and then obviously you're growing and maturing, but again, just keeping grounded, because obviously in this industry, people make a lot of money, they lose themselves. And so thankfully, I had really amazing parents who just didn't even know what I did, what bank I worked for. And I liked that because I never got pumped up. Whereas if you went sometimes to the master, like my daughter's a VP, and I'm like, what level are you? I didn't even know. So I quite like that. So if you've grown up in that kind of, household, you tend to keep it really real, which I think is really important.
Considering when you were growing up, you didn't think like you were even going to work, or that was the expectation, you weren't going to work. What was it like being, especially in that there's some sort, right? There wouldn't be many like South Asian women in this kind of industries. How did you have to deal with that at all? Was there any pushback? Did you feel like you had to fight harder?
Not really. I mean, people say generally, I've got to work harder. I can't do this. You don't smoke, you don't drink, so you can't network. I never want to use those experiences to hold back, and this is now, it's easy for women to wear whatever they want. At that time, you had to wear skirts and Thomas Pink shirts and be really immaculately dressed. And I wanted to fit in that way, but I still knew that I knew where my boundaries were. And it is difficult growing up as a British Asian. Then if you're Muslim as well, but you're British as well, then you're working in a bank, which is fairly westernized. Then you've got to try and find that identity, but you can't just pick and choose one, that you are an amalgamation of all of those things. What does that look like? But I've always been very proud of certain aspects of my culture, and just kind of elevating that. So there are people who didn't have Muslim friends, or were aware of Ramadan or Eid, or not even water. You can't even drink water. And and then invite them to my house to break iftar or come for a party, and having a party without alcohol. But then you bring people into your word and you normalize it. And like most of my friends are non-Muslim, because it's easy to just be around your community, but it's actually you pick and choose friends because they have the common character traits. They are. My biggest thing is kindness and respect, honesty, and also philanthropy. All of my friends have a philanthropy thread through them. And even the well-known friends I have who are mentors, which we can talk about later, there is that common thread. From a friend who's a hairdresser, one of the top hairdressers in London, to somebody who is running a billionaire business. It's just, we are just essentially the same, to be honest. We aren't our jobs, it's just something we do. And this, I think, I grew up where people just got really pumped up, what car they were driving or where they were living. And I always thought that that's just not really who you are. It's what you were left with after a shipwreck. So after a shipwreck, all you have is yourself, really. So what do you stand up for? What's your legacy? What would you want to have on your tomb? And as Muslims, we buy a kafan. Kafan is the white shroud. I bought that when I went for Hajj many, many years ago. And you buy it, that's your last outfit. So all this, whatever you want to adorn yourself with, is irrelevant. And this is not like a textbook answer. I really, truly believe in that we wear many personas throughout our years. But ultimately, what you're left with, what are you building your character for? And having your own business, there are people who are relying on you, and you need to be aspirational. They need to look up to you. They need to respect you. And you've got a responsibility of nurturing people and sending them their way. They're on their own journey. So intrinsically, you have to be in check with who you are as a person, and not get caught up in the measurements, the tangible measurements of success, and that's really, you have to keep reminding yourself not to get caught up in that.
Obviously, you were doing so well in your career, right, in the banking side of things and progressing, but you said that you never really got attached to that as your identity or your life. Did you ever think maybe someday you would become something else?
No, I liked it because it's rewarding. You work hard, you get a certain salary. It affords you to go on amazing holidays, to have an amazing apartment. So, the correlation of hard work to what you get is really great. So I am not one of those stereotypical people who hated my job. My job has had an impact on how I run my businesses, and I'm still in touch with my first boss. So I'm never going to demean that or negate that experience. But my thing is, I didn't even think too much about it. My story is even more unique because I wasn't planning to leave banking. It was just a sidebar conversation. And I thought, what would really happen if I did that? And I was given a year sabbatical at Berkshire Hathaway. I was working for Warren Buffett, and just a chance meeting in a airport lounge, and would have me invite Warren Buffett to my house. And then he brings Bill and Melinda Gates. Then I end up doing an event for Bill and Melinda Gates. And then my life just exploded. And then it's just thinking, okay, this is happening to me, for me. I have no idea where it's going to take me, but I feel like this is my path. It has to be. Otherwise, why would it have happened? And I researched and did a business plan, and it just became easier. You recently had a guest on your podcast, Nafisa Packer, who wrote a book called How to Make Money. And she's also become a very good friend of mine. And when she was putting the book together, so there's all these business books out there, but no one tells you when it gets really tough how to be innovative and how to push through. And because so many businesses start up, about 70% of them just go belly down, belly up, right? And it's because people don't push through that uncomfortable feeling. But many times when I want to turn back and go back to banking, it's far easier. But what you learn about yourself when you go through those challenges and you meet other people who are very honest, I think that working for somebody and then creating a business are two separate skill sets. And you learn so much about yourself, and I've enjoyed that journey.
You just mentioned there, like in passing, about Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, right? Which isn't in passing for most people listening. What was that conversation like? How did that actually happen? Like, why would the conversation with Warren Buffett lead to you creating a catering company?
So I'm working for his organization at the time. I think it was 2012, and I saw him in a waiting lounge, and I thought I could talk to him. I thought, no, I can't. I thought, screw it, I'm just going to go and talk to him. I said, I work for your organization. He knew exactly who I was, and it was just a normal conversation. And then he said, if I'm ever in New York, I'll let you know, and we should, I'd love, we started talking about food. Typically, I said, I make a really nice chicken biryani, let me know. And that was it, end of conversation. And a couple of months later, his PA gets in touch with me. So Warren and his wife would like to come for dinner. And I'm like, what? I was living in a tiny apartment in Lower East Side, finished work early, went home. But a couple of days before, they said, we have friends. And I was already doing some philanthropy work anyway, both in London and in sort of Middle Eastern countries. And he said, well, we've got some friends who are actually in town. I'd love for you to meet them. I'm like, sure. I opened my apartment door, there was Bill and Melinda Gates, and I was like, what is going on? And I couldn't process. And so I'm very good in like conflicts where I can't, okay, this is what's going on right now. Let's just park that and deal with it and just allow myself to be present. And then subsequently what happened was we knew the same people. He knew the charity that I was, Abdul Sattar Eidi is like I would say Mother Teresa of Pakistan. So we knew we had that in common. And so he said, we're doing a fundraiser in Palo Alto. Could you possibly do the same dinner for 20 of our friends? Like, sure, no problem. Went on a private jet for the first time. Thought it was like, okay, this is amazing. There's so much security here. Did the dinner and was quite effortless because I'm used to cooking for so many people. And then you've got the Clintons, the Obamas, and I was like, holy moly, what is going on? And it's about leaning into it. And at the time, Sheryl Sandberg had written this book. I thought, right, this is happening to me, for me. So I have no idea, it does not make any sense, but let me just put myself in the situation. And that night over cigars, we discussed, you've got a skill set, storytelling, and you're personally so not made for banking. So what about if we gave you a year sabbatical and you set up this company? And I'm like, it's not going to make any money, a food business. I had no idea about that. I researched it and I thought, okay, let me move back to London and set it up here. And
why was that? Why did you move back to London for that?
Because, I'm from London. I was born and brought up in London, and I was in New York. I love New York. New York is really fast-paced, but I had a quite nice lifestyle. I thought, okay, come back and set up my business here because London has a good hub of diverse global clients. And I'm based in Hampstead, and Hampstead, typically, you've got like Jewish, Arab, different types of people, South African. It's just a nice bunch of people. So I set up my company and called it the Hampstead Kitchen, quite quintessential British. And we registered the company in 2013. And we're going to be, fingers crossed, inshallah, celebrating our decade in the business in June.
When that year sabbatical ended, or like when that 1 year was up, was it already, there's no way you're going back? Or was there still, did you have that thought in your head, actually, maybe I do go back? What was that thought process like at that stage?
For a while, I did it part-time. But then it's just, you're working 7 days a week. And then suddenly you thought, what's the worst that's going to happen? I can always come back. And then but the moment you keep looking back in the rearview mirror, you lose sight of where you're going. And a lot of people are very guilty of that. And it is a very uncomfortable feeling, setting up something from you. Is it going to work? But also when you work for a banking role and earning 6 figures, as you can see right now, the bank can collapse. You could lose your job. So there's no thing as a lifetime guarantee. It's like a false security in your head, to be honest. So when you start looking at that, you think, what's the worst? And obviously, what was going to happen? I'll lose my money, I'll lose my properties or whatever it is, but I can still go home and go and live with mum and dad. So, touch wood, I'm not going to. So I think it's about throwing yourself out of that plane, but knowing you've got a parachute behind you and you've got to really feel confident. The moment you let doubt seep in, that's when you're just stumbling to take the step. So you've got to be just bold. And that's what I did. I thought, right, that rearview mirror doesn't exist. I'm never going back into banking. That's it. I tried. And then my boss sent me a reference and said, don't even think about it, kid. So when I knew that door has to be shut fully for you to really excel forward. I think people stay in that limbo. You're not going backwards, you're not going forwards. And that's why then businesses don't tend to. And I know that's quite a black and white view, but I have seen a lot of people hesitate and then they're not making leaps. And I always say that your eyes are in the front of your head. So you look forward, you look back to see how far you've come. And again, they sound very cliche when I'm saying this, but I truly, truly sort of believe in that. And that's why then I think I sustained myself in the business. We did very well in just a couple of years. There was an appetite for it in a very saturated market. So that was really interesting.
I think a big reason why a lot of people don't drive forwards, right, is because they're worried about not being good at something. Because in your career, you were amazing at your job, right? What skills do you think you had to adapt the most from the banking career to excel in what you're doing now with your business? What skills did you have to change? Because obviously a lot of the skills are transferred over. There have been some things which you had to learn and you had to be a beginner at again.
True, but then I think that I like learning new things. I'm kind of like thinking what my next chapter is going to be. But I think getting stuck in just being one dimension is pretty boring in life. And again, there was no guarantee that I was going to be successful in banking either. I saw many people come and go, and even with businesses. But I do know that if you bring ego into it, then there are more potential to fail. When you attach your own identity to a job or a business, and even look at my Instagram, very rarely do I put a picture of myself on there because the business isn't really me. People say, yes, it is you. That's one aspect, especially the VIP stuff that I do. There are many people who work in our organization, and to be honest, I always say we, because one person can't make a business a success. For sure. So for me, I think you have a certain personality. Like I had a certain personality that was performing when I was 3 years old, 4 years old. I have the ability to take the stressful situation out of a situation and deal with that, and then deal with the rubbish that follows. So that translates well into global projects. That translates well into events because there's a start, a middle, and an end time. So it's like running an amazing project every single day. And then every day at the end of the day, yay, I delivered that, right? So it suits well to my mindset. So I think you have to be very clear the type of person you are, what job you've been doing, and that there's a commonality. I don't think anybody does anything that divorced from one another. There is a common link. And understanding what that is. Just before the pandemic, I decided, I want to go. I was covering for a friend in hedge funds, but I enjoyed it because suddenly when you are in the food business, you're wearing Converse and jeans, and then that corporate styling kind of goes, and I was kind of missing that. And you get so engrossed in your business that you lose yourself. So I wanted to find that, and balance is really, really important. So I went back, started running a global risk regulation project, really loved it. But then again, started stretching myself too thinly, got really sick, like, what am I doing here? I'm trying to do two things, but what do I really enjoy the most? And it is running my business. Yes, you can get sleepless nights as well, but I look around and so many people who've been running business for 30, 40 years, their business have gone closed down. And I look around, I thought, right, I've been a bit more quieter on Instagram because I just want to be a bit more humble, a bit more mindful that people's business haven't done well. Some didn't innovate, some pure bad luck, or didn't get ahead of the times, or didn't, the tech isn't there. So yeah, I think you've got to keep a few on the ground, because anytime anything can happen all at once. And so navigating that has been quite interesting. Nobody's got their life planned out. You can put a 6-month plan and a 1-year plan, and something can happen that changes that. It either gets better or worse, but you're still on that sort of path to make it happen.
So you mentioned there about it's a we, right? Because it's not just you running a company by yourself, and you've hired a lot of people. You've got a huge team now. Can you talk about that side of things? Like, how is it to hire those kind of people when it's one thing when you're a manager in a company, but when it's for your own baby and your own project that you care so much about, how is it hiring those people and finding the right people too?
Well, the people who work for me, there's two types. They're front of house that have to be immaculate, who've worked for, Coutts & Co. and who've worked in palaces, so they know how to serve and how to talk to guests. And there's also people behind the scenes. There's a lot of ex-refugee people who work for me. There's lots of people. There's a gentleman who works with me who's, lost a wife and 2 kids from Grenfell. I meet these people by chance. Philanthropy, pretty much, I would say 40 to 30% of my profits goes into quite a lot of organisations, both in London and abroad. And we recently raised £1 million for Turkey and Syria just from my clientele. So yes, I cook for very well-to-do clientele, but because of them, I get to do a lot of philanthropy work. But I meet my people not through an agency, but just by heart. I've met people on the street. I've met people at a fundraiser or in a homeless shelter of somebody who's trying to get off the streets. There's a big Asian community in prisons, and when they come out, they really get a second chance. So I've hired 1 or 2 of those kind of people from those backgrounds, and it's lovely to see them then grow and create their own little mini catering businesses. But yeah, it's through chance, and it was just meant to be. Our paths meet, and then they're a bit more invested. They treat my business as their business. So the model is really good. So it's a bit more with heart rather than just hiring from an agency. It's someone who's not going to understand how the business works and how to create an experience, a tactile experience. Food is food. I can say, it's made with love, but it is about making the whole event something a bit more different, with storytelling, having the right people to serve food, engage, that makes that experience a bit more memorable. And yeah, that's what we're about. So hiring from our kitchen porter to the person who drives from, is taking our dishes, each point, it has to represent Hampstead Kitchen, which is that we know how to look after anybody who's from, they could be a lord or lady or a little old biddy that lives down the road who's just celebrating her birthday and is only going to use a private chef or catering company once in her life. So we don't kind of, differentiate between that, which is everybody has the same sort of experience.
What's exciting for you right now? What are you looking forward to in the future and Hampstead Kitchen?
I think post-pandemic, we've become a bit more niche. We've got away from we're not doing a mass or high volume, and we're really making sure that we go for clients who give us all of their events, both personal and professional, to do. We're tending to do lots of events outside of London. So we have a lot of clients in the Hamptons, New York. So we need to create a way where we can not expand, but create like a mini version, but still not lose the essence of what Hampstead Kitchen is about. So I actually want to get more involved. I want to create a studio. And I think 10 years in the business is enough time, because I'm a Warren Buffett baby, where we hustle. We do not spend money on anything, only when we need to. So we don't. So now I think it's time to have a studio space. I now want to create evenings where we get people from the Instagram social media community who are not going to hire us to do an event. but get an opportunity to meet us, and we can do a bit more sort of fundraising with the public, but also styling and branding food brands. I've been asked to do that quite a lot. So having my own space will allow me to do that. So that's next for us. This summer is all about events. And then, probably early autumn, we will have our own sort of studio space. And maybe we can invite you to come and, to have
If
a
there's
spin.
food on there.
No, for sure. So I think London doesn't have that many venues where you can easily meet up. So I think I want to create a space where we can get sort of like-minded people over food, like breaking bread, not quite a supper club, but something a bit more elevated to have a bit more interesting discussions, I think, around food and culture and philanthropy.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. We're over time, so I'm going to go to a quick fire questions.
Okay.
So first one is, who are three appreciations that you'd love to shout out that you think people listening right now should be paying attention to?
I would say a guy called Omar Suleiman. He is the guy behind Open Iftar. I now know that he's got a couple of big wigs on the board, but such a beautiful concept. I mean, now it's just got elevated and become this huge beast. They were hosting Iftars in Chelsea Football Ground and V&A, but London's quite a lonely city, and he created a space for people. You could be homeless, you could be a judge, to sit down and open iftar. Nafisa Bakr, obviously, she's the one she recommended me, but I find her incredibly inspiring because she's British, she's Asian, and she's created this amazing platform. But this book that it was such a huge honor to be a part of it, about how to make money, because she's got access to people not only in our community but outside the community. And I think that there's not many people who are able to be in both camps. And the third one is a recent one. It's an Instagram friend. We haven't really met, Asad Hamir, but you interviewed him. These are three people that I like following. I like their voice. But there are lots of unsung heroes. They may not be on social media, but they do a lot. There's a guy that is behind Sufra, which is a food bank. The original guy, it was a very small concept. It's now become big, and there's now people who are doing the project manager of it. But there are people who are really impressive and created a really nice blueprint. So it might not be very shiny, but there are some really amazing people in the community who've done some wonderful things.
Yeah, so I've obviously met two of those people and loved it.
Yeah.
Open Iftar, I haven't been obviously, but I know about it, and it's like I always hear such great things about it as well.
Yeah.
So next question is, if people listening right now maybe could reach out to you for help or guidance,
Sure.
what could they reach out to you about?
Anything. I mean, I get DMs all the time. I mean, I've got a separate workshop that I do one-to-one. So someone's got an idea, and it could be a housewife, could be somebody who's changing career. And it's very hard to answer the question. I like to know a bit more information, so it's a bit more targeted. So I do a one-day workshop. Starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'll make some of the Hampstead kitchen food. And then we sit down and really business planning. Everybody's got great ideas, but understanding the audience. So really getting people to think about, has this idea got legs? And what's the next step? Do you have capital? Where do you see your services or product? So I think spending 4 or 5 hours to give people initial tools, because I want people to succeed. You want to pay it forward. I was very fortunate. I had the mentors, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. I mean, it doesn't get any better, but I liked how they put me in charge, but they asked really targeted questions. What can you sacrifice, or what can you change about your existing lifestyle? I put my house on Airbnb. I shared my house with strangers so I wouldn't dig into my capital. My business was very important. It wasn't like a side project. My mortgage depended on my business being successful. So there's got to be this kind of something that fuels you. A lot of people, it's just like, oh, I'd like to have this. So I knocked that out of the park, that it can't be a vanity project. Yep. How much money do you want to make and what's your aim? So I get very passionate about that. So people DM me, but not DM me lazily, like, can you tell me how you did it? Like, come with a proper question and put some time aside, because I can't meet for coffee with everybody. So that sort of service, there is sort of, there's a wait list, there's a charge for it, but it also attracts people who really want to know and really want to help, because it's really good guidance. Instagram handle, I have an email, that's Saima, and I have a mobile number, so you'll always get me.
And then on the other side, is there anything that you need help with right now? Or is it kitchen help with?
What do I need help with? More sleep? Not really. I mean, we figure it out. I've had to ask some really interesting questions. I have so many people who want to invest in the business and make it really big. But no, it is about numbers. It's finding more time to have more of a personal life, more of a balance. Because in the pandemic, we had to really expand our business to keep afloat, and which we did. But now it's about what do we do really well, really honing in on our clients and then focusing on that. So rather than doing 10 events, I'd rather do one event, even if it's taking me to Tuscany. So revenues are really important. And, last year we had one of our most successful years, touch wood. So what did we do really well there? We said no to most things, and the things we said yes to, and just trusting our gut a bit more. Because if you come from a place of fear, then when that goes wrong, then you have yourself to blame. But sometimes taking chances, like, there's something about this person, this deal that feels right. And I've never regretted going with a hunch. And I think in business, when you've got bills to pay and people to pay, and with the cost of living crisis, we've had to, triple our salaries, because without staff, you don't have a business. So all of those tough decisions, and they're not easy to make. Are we going to lose business? So I think it's a continuous process. You have to keep tweaking. I think business is like it's a radio frequency. You're always tweaking, and sometimes you get a really clear signal and sometimes a little bit weak, but that's where we are.
So thank you so much for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Have you got any final words to the audience?
Well, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I'm really getting to hear some lovely voices by following it, and I wish you all the best. I think we all have something to learn from everybody, and everybody's story is unique. What somebody else is doing, you can't copy that and create that yourself. I think realize what your DNA is and what you're good at, and that takes courage and that takes strength to do that, and be inspired by others, but never try and replicate what somebody else is doing there. It's a different set of circumstances, exposure, experience. And I think that would be my biggest advice to people.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission, and you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.